A Course in Miracles, Lesson 265. Creation's gentleness is all I see. I have indeed misunderstood the world, because I laid my sins on it and saw them looking back at me. How fierce they seemed. And how deceived was I to think that what I feared was in the world, instead of in my mind alone. Today I see the world in the celestial gentleness with which creation shines. There is no fear in it. Let no appearance of my sins obscure the light of heaven shining on the world. What is reflected there is in God's mind. The images I see reflect my thoughts, yet is my mind at one with God's, and so I can perceive creation's gentleness. In quiet would I look upon the world, which but reflects your thoughts, and mine as well. Let me remember that they are the same, and I will see creation's gentleness. Lesson 265. Creation's gentleness is all I see. This lesson is a surgical lamp aimed straight at perception. Laying sins on the world is the precise metaphysical error, because the mind projects its terror onto form and then mistakes the projection for fact. Those projections were not timid. They were fierce, ferocious in appearance, because the mind, when invested in survival, intensifies every shadow into a predator. Fierce, therefore, points to the intensity of belief, not to any property of the world. To have been deceived is to have taken the projection for reality, to have yoked inner narrative to outer evidence, and then called the marriage proof. The inner narrative is the story the ego tells in the mind: fear, guilt, blame, or grievance. The outer evidence is what the senses seem to show in the world: an angry face, a collapsing economy, a betrayal, a sickness. To yoke them is to bind them together and claim they match, as if the outer picture proves the inner story was correct all along. It is the circular reasoning of projection. The mind plants the seed of fear, sees the sprout in the world, and then insists the sprout proves the seed was real. The marriage is a false union, the wedding of cause and effect at the level of illusion. The proof is counterfeit, because the cause was never in the world at all. The proof only convinces the deceived mind, not truth. A Course in Miracles teaches that the world is nothing more than a witness to the thoughts of the mind. So the so-called proof is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The mind condemns itself and then shows itself the evidence of that condemnation, mistaking reflection for fact. The correction is to remember that the marriage never took place because the cause is only in the mind. Break the yoke, and the world is released to show what is truly there: creation's gentleness. A Course in Miracles teaches that the only question worth asking is where the thought originated. If the thought is of fear, its home is the separate mind. If the thought is of gentleness, its home is the mind at one with God. The phenomenology of vision changes instantly when the mind changes its frame. Phenomenology is the study of experience, how things appear to awareness. Vision in A Course in Miracles is not about the eyes, but about perception, what the mind sees because of what it believes. When the frame changes, it means the context or lens of interpretation changes. If the frame is fear, then every event is interpreted as threat, loss, or attack. If the frame is love, then the same event is interpreted as harmless, neutral, or even helpful for awakening. The outer scene does not change in itself. The same faces, same streets, same sky. What changes is the way the mind experiences those forms. That's why the shift can be instantaneous. The world has no independent reality, it only mirrors the chosen frame of mind. Switch the frame, and the whole world seems to transform in that very moment. This is why the Course insists, Projection makes perception. Perception is not fixed, it is pliable because it is the offspring of thought. Change the thought, and the experience of vision changes right away. A mirror does not transform itself. It only shows what is set before it. Clean the lens first, and the world becomes gentle. Celestial gentleness reframes gentleness as sovereign, not weak, and describes power controlled by love, the strength that holds without crushing and heals without forcing. Heavenly gentleness is demanding because it requires undoing aggression at source, the thought that made the world a battleground. Heavenly gentleness is not passive or weak, but active and strong. It asks the mind to go all the way back to the cause of violence, not to patch behavior, not to regulate emotion, but to face the original thought that produced the perception of attack. That thought is separation itself, the belief that the mind broke away from God and must now defend itself. From that single error, aggression is born, competition, judgment, defense, and war. The world looks like a battleground only because the mind has accepted that initial attack thought and projected it outward. Undoing aggression at its source means withdrawing belief from that root idea, recognizing it as false, and refusing to nourish it further. That is demanding because it cuts deeper than any surface adjustment. It exposes the hidden engine of fear. To be gentle in the heavenly sense is to stand in strength, letting no grievance alter the decision for love. It is not compliance with the world, but liberation from the world's premise. That's why gentleness is the mark of mastery. It shows the attack thought has been undone at the level where it began. Practical work is witness plus reallocation, which looks simple but is difficult because it asks for the discipline of recognition rather than the habit of reaction. Practical work in this context is how the lesson gets lived moment to moment. First comes witness, noticing the thought, the emotion, the projection without denying or dressing it up. Witnessing is pure observation. I see fear, I see anger, I see judgment. Then comes reallocation, choosing to give that thought back to the right teacher in the mind, the Holy Spirit, instead of letting the ego interpret it. That move looks simple, just notice and hand it over. But it is not easy because the ego has trained the mind to react instantly. The habit of reaction is to defend, attack, justify, or fix the image outside. Recognition, by contrast, requires pausing long enough to see the cause is not out there, but in the mind. That pause is discipline because it interrupts the reflex of blame and reclaims responsibility at the level of thought. So the difficulty is not in the mechanics, notice, release, but in breaking the addiction to reaction. The Course calls this mind training. Every pause for recognition weakens the reflex of reaction and strengthens the habit of remembering the source. Over time, the discipline becomes natural, and gentleness flows without effort because the mind has been retrained to choose love. Witness the fierceness as a weather system of thought, not as a law of being. When fierceness arises, anger, fear, aggression, judgment, it feels absolute, like a law of being. The ego insists, this is who I am, this is how the world is. But the Course reframes it as a passing weather system, a cluster of storm clouds moving through the sky of mind. A weather system has intensity. It can obscure the sun. It can feel overwhelming, but it is temporary, not the essence of the sky. The law of being is changeless. Love, gentleness, creation's innocence. To mistake the weather for the sky is to mistake passing thoughts for identity. To witness the fierceness as weather is to step back, observe it, and remember it will pass, because it is not what the mind is in truth. That perspective dissolves identification with the storm and restores awareness of the unshaken sky, the gentleness of creation. Ask with steady curiosity which mind is thinking this. Then choose the thought that matches the one mind, the gentle, celestial option. This choice is not moralizing. It is recognition, a memory of the shared mind that removes the need to defend an imagined self. Imagine a darkened theater where fear has been cast in every role finally becomes empty when the curtain is pulled back because the actors were only masks worn by thought. Behind the curtain is daylight, creation's gentleness, which requires only remembrance to become the play's only light. The image of the lake and the deer shows the mechanism practically. Stillness reflects stillness, and gentleness reflects gentleness. When inner turbulence subsides, form follows. A mild field of perception mirrors the mind that rests. A Course in Miracles teaches that forgiveness is the method of shifting thought content, because forgiveness undoes the personal narrative that sustains projection. Forgiveness here is epistemic rather than ethical. It undoes the belief in a wrong that must be corrected in form. Most people hear forgiveness as an ethical move. Someone really wronged someone, but the victim is noble enough to overlook it. That version still assumes the wrong was real, still embedded in form, and only the response is adjusted. A Course in Miracles uses forgiveness differently. Here, forgiveness is epistemic, about knowing and perception, because it questions whether the wrong ever truly occurred at all. It undoes the belief that form has the power to injure, and with it the belief that correction must happen in the world. The wrong was only a projection, an image of guilt assigned to a body or event. To forgive in this sense is to recognize that what seemed to happen has no reality in truth, because the mind at one with God cannot be harmed. So forgiveness becomes a correction of perception, not a moral high ground. It restores vision by removing the veil of error, letting the world be seen in creation's gentleness rather than in sin's shadow. The sovereign gentleness is therefore an act of will that is willing to see differently, not a passive surrender. In practical terms, short exercises accelerate the reallocation of attention. Name the fear, feel its charge, ask which mind is producing it, and then hold the gentler thought until the reflection changes. Persistence is required because projection is habitual. Repetition unhooks the reflex. The final test is perception. When the mind no longer invests in images of sin, the world ceases to appear as a battleground and reveals only creation's gentleness. Memory of separation dissolves, and gentleness is all that remains. There is a reflection on the surface of a small, still lake. Until the mind is still, that reflection will be mistaken for a thing, rather than the echo of thought in the theater of perception.